SicEm365 Radio. It's time for Craig Smoak's Off the Radar.
All right. Back here on SicEm365 Radio. Time for Off the Radar. Taking a look at a few stories that we might not typically spend a lot of time on or even mention, if not for this segment. I know when Smokey was on vacation, he definitely had to be watching that Floyd Mayweather-Logan Paul boxing match.
I got to tell you.
Did you and the brothers rent that?
No, we didn't. I just kind of slightly kept up with it. Not that I was worried about it. I just knew it would be a farce. I saw Mayweather have a little bit of a knot under his right eye, which is something he's probably never had before. That is so today in sports, and they made millions, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Yeah, I know that they did. I know Floyd made double-digit millions easily. I think it was a UFC fighter. It might have been John Jones or someone else. I saw this in passing where they made the comment that Floyd was making at least like $20 million, if not way more than that on this fight, because that's what Floyd makes for fights. And this wasn't even a real fight. This was an exhibition with no declared winner. So it was basically just that's what it was. It was an exhibition, and he still made regular purse money practically off this. I don't know what the pay-per-view numbers are yet. I would imagine it probably sold a few pay-per-views, though. I'd imagine it probably did well because there is some attraction here. But Dana White was asked about Floyd Mayweather. He and Floyd have had their fair share of, barbs and whatnot thrown back and forth at each other. They flirted a little while. Mayweather thought about entering the UFC to basically do what he's doing now, except for to do it seriously, unlike now where it's mostly just a complete joke is what it's turning into. But Dana White said on the fight between Paul and Mayweather, I didn't see it, but I heard it went the distance, and I would love to see Floyd retire. No more. He should retire. Floyd should retire. He's had an incredible career, and to do these fights, these types of fights, is just, it's silly. So Dana White advocating for Floyd to stop with the goofiness and to hang up the gloves. But he did say on Paul, the possibility of really either of the Paul brothers getting into the UFC at some point. He did say that he respected their hustle, that they've trained really hard, and clearly they've trained. They've actually taken this serious. He gives them respect for basically starting a YouTube channel when they were 12 years old and turning it into fighting Floyd freaking Mayweather on pay-per-view, for God's sakes. I mean, and they're multi-millionaires, so you have to give them credit for the business acumen and for the athletic side. He said he's got no hate. They parlayed their success on YouTube and are now making big money fights. I say this all the time. There's always going to be a market for these types of fights. Imagine if Kim Kardashian wanted to fight Amanda Nunes. And he said, that's the thing. I see a lot of these fighters crying. This guy's making this money. This guy's making this money. What do you think Kim Kardashian would make if she came in and fought Amanda Nunes? Probably more than anybody's ever made ever. So that was Dana just commenting on the Freak Show fight this past weekend, which I say in a loving tone, really, and also his opinion on Floyd Mayweather's fighting career.
It's a joke, and yet it's a moneymaker. He's always been a moneymaker, and these Paul kids, whatever they're, the twins or brothers or whatever, they've become these stars, and of course they got, the other brother? Who's the other one? That's it's
Jake and Logan Paul.
Yeah, he got into it with an UFC guy on the side.
He beat a UFC guy, and then had the little. I mean, the fights that they're doing now, like they're setting them up, like so. He beats.
But why?
Because people are buying it.
Yeah. What's the attraction to watch these two guys?
Because you don't get it, and I don't really even get it, and I'm the youngest of the three of us. But it's no different than when you were growing up, it was musicians, actors, and athletes, right?
Yeah.
That's who you probably looked up to. Although back in your day, you probably actually respected the people who do real work as well, the astronauts and people like that. In my generation, it grew a little bit, and entertainment became wider. And now, a lot of these social media people, I don't get it. I don't get the pull or the attraction or any of it, but millions upon millions of kids do, and teenagers, and people who were teenagers when the Pauls were teenagers, and they're in their 20s, and so that's your audience right there.
Yeah, Smokey, you remember we used to do celebrity birthdays on the show?
I don't.
A little bit. I mean, we used to do it from time to time. So when I would have to do that instead of the producer that day, I would go to the website. They sent me this website, and it would go celebrity birthdays. And I would expect to see Robert Redford, Richard Nixon, people who are famous for doing something. And then they would have before you had to weed through all these TikTok stars and YouTube personalities. And I was like, well, Robert Redford was in Butch and Sundance and all these great movies, and Neil Armstrong went to the friggin' moon, and this guy farts in a microphone on YouTube, and I don't know.
Well, it's like the
why
Instagram
the same
models
thing,
that are
yeah.
making millions because of whoever follows them. I have to say this, but then again, I can always remember Muhammad Ali. He was the world champion, fought Antonio Inoki, a Japanese wrestler, in 1976 in the summer. And it was kind of the same thing. It was an exhibition. It ended up with a draw. It was kind of a joke. And I was like, God, Ali, what are you doing? And yet they made millions. So it's not like it just happened recently.
Yeah, that's also one of the worst all-time fights ever in the history, because the difference there is that was not Inoki and Ali was not straight boxing. Yeah. Ali boxed, Inoki did his normal fighting, so basically Inoki just perched down the entire fight and just kicked Ali's legs repeatedly.
107 times.
107 times he just kicked Ali in the legs. This was straight boxing, and that's what I was saying on the show yesterday is like, I give these guys their credit for their marketing ability and the fan bases they built up. Again, it's at not my age wheelhouse, so I give them all the credit in the world for that, but at the same time, Floyd Mayweather was 7 inches shorter and like 50 pounds lighter. He's, in his 40s. He's basically retired at this point. So I want to see how legit these guys are, because they obviously have trained and they're legitimately trained, but I want to see him fight an actual heavyweight. You know what I mean? Let's see a real boxing match. But right now they're getting all this money off of pay-per-view exhibitions and things like that. So I'm sure we're going to see it continue. And I actually just did see this. Apparently the Mayweather-Paul pay-per-view did between 600,000 and 650,000 buys. That's many millions of dollars.
Wow. That Inoki and Ali fight, by the way, I just saw this, across 34 countries, around an estimated audience of 1.4 billion people.
Yeah.
150 closed-circuit TV locations in the United States alone.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was really boring.
Yeah, it was.
Really boring.
It was.
So between 600 and 650,000 pay-per-view buys, and Dana White feels like Floyd should retire, but he's open to the idea, he's leaving the door cracked that if they take it seriously moving forward, then maybe he throws them in there at some point, but that would be a whole different ballgame. That would be actual MMA, not boxing, and I don't know how well that would go for them. So anyways, just a slight update on that right there. Also, Julio Jones, newest member of the Tennessee Titans, he will not wear his customary number 11. He says that he is refusing to take the digits. A.J. Brown, his new teammate, tried to give him the number 11, or figured that he'd want the number 11, maybe even offered a purchase type of deal like they normally do. But he said he tried like hell to give Julio the number, and he was a big part of why Julio came to Tennessee, but he said that Julio wouldn't accept it. So he respects that. He's excited to have him on the team, and that just means Julio was already going to sell new jerseys with the Titans logo, but now he'll have a new number too, so that'll probably boost sales even further.
All right, I got a question. Who was their other receiver they lost?
Corey Davis went to the Jets.
Okay, how much, I know that you may scoff at me, how much better is Julio Jones than Corey Davis?
I mean, I think he's better. I don't think right now he's that much better.
At a wide receiver position, how much of a difference will Julio Jones be compared to Corey Davis? I know that he's better. I know he's a freak. But how?
I think I don't know if it's about better, so much better if they can keep that production that they had last year from Corey Davis, who was, just shy of 1,000 yards, and they had A.J. Brown as well. They also lost Jonnu Smith to the Patriots, so it's about, if they can match some of that production, I don't think it's about better.
So this doesn't make them better.
I mean, if it makes them the same, it doesn't make them worse.
Be careful when you get to the point where you start saying, okay, who's going to be a Super Bowl contender? I don't think this makes the Titans a Super Bowl contender.
What's going to make them
really good?
What's making them a Super Bowl contender is if they can stop them.
They're in a division with the Texans and who else?
The
Colts are pretty good,
Jaguars.
and the Jaguars, who, again, okay, all right.
Yep, so Julio will be changing numbers. I'm sure they'll have that jersey up there at some point very soon on the Titans website for those that may be interested, but they did try to give him number 11. He just wanted something different. Gadsden High School in New Mexico has announced they are going independent. They said they will not play Class 6A in the state of New Mexico, and then they won't be in any district or classification. They instead have decided to play teams closer to their skill level in 2021. They have arch rivals like Centennial and Las Cruces and Mayfield, And by going independent, they can make their own schedule and they can schedule bigger teams. Apparently, schools like Santa Teresa and Chaparral, but they're going to go independent for this year and I guess beef up their schedule or make it more in line. And I just found that interesting because that's not a move that, I mean, it's like one thing when a college declares they're going to go independent, but in high school, you don't hear that often.
But if you go independent, that means you don't get to play for a state title. So what you're telling your team is like, what's important to us is playing as many games as we can. I want it to be better. We want to challenge it, but like you're not going to get a trophy.
Do those recruiting machines in Florida?
IMG, they can't do it.
They can't play for a state championship, but that's what they want to play for is be ranked number 1 in the USA Today or ESPN or whatever, and they can be in that conversation. That would be interesting to start. Like, what school in Texas would just say, we're no longer going to play for a UIL state title? If they're a public school, nobody. I can't imagine anybody.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Because that's a huge deal to win it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, Gadsden out in New Mexico, just found that interesting that they are going to go independent. So we'll see how that goes for them there in the state of New Mexico this upcoming season. The Olympics are still on track to happen, guys. Even though
Is that
Japan,
this summer?
A month from now.
Yeah.
A month from now.
It just seems like I don't know that.
Yeah, Japan is not doing well with coronavirus, and there's just a lot of worry and fret going on. But at least like a somewhat cool story out of that is today the Olympic Committee announced their refugee athletes. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's actually a refugee team in the Olympics. Did y'all know that?
No, I didn't know.
So there's Team USA, there's Team Kenya, there's Team whatever, but there's also a refugee team. This year will be comprised of 29 athletes across 12 sports. They will compete next month in Tokyo, if Tokyo is able to make this thing work, which is kind of, I don't know yet. They will compete under the Olympic flag, and they will have refugees from Syria, South Sudan, Eritrea, Afghanistan, and Iran. And it's almost triple the amount of refugees they had on the team back during the Rio de Janeiro games. So for those who no longer feel like they have a home or have escaped where they were unhappy and probably didn't have very good lives, they still can be Olympic athletes. They just don't have one country. They're just under the banner of refugees.
That's good. If they've earned it based on their times or distance or whatever, good for them.
Yeah, I mean, like and think about it just in a sense of patriotism, if your country is bad, I mean, it's terrible like the Sudan, do you want to run in waving the flag for the Sudan? Probably not.
Right.
Who wants to do that?
Kimya Alizada, who is the first female Olympic medalist from Iran. She won bronze back in 2016 in Taekwondo. Her and a fellow Iranian who is a canoe racer, they are a part of the refugee team. And Alizada said she left Iran in 2020. She was oppressed as a woman. Falzula, the canoe racer, ended up going to Germany back in 2015 via a route through the Balkan Islands. And so, they took off, and now they'll be able to represent their country. So I think that's pretty cool. I wonder
if there are any, with the way things are in this
America,
country, I wonder if there are any athletes who want to think that they can send a message by going to compete for the refugee school.
Oh, I think that, is
that going to happen?
No, you can't.
You can't be a refugee from America. You can't just say you're a refugee.
That's some QAnon
you never know
thought.
Anymore.
That's some QAnon thinking right there. Right. I mean, you can't be a refugee from a country that's not war-torn.
No, you're right.
I mean,
although some would love to act
oppressed.
Like that.
Oppressed?
No.
I would love for the oppressed to go live in Eritrea or Kenya.
And you would understand that you live in a
if
freaking Shangri-La.
If from any country, if you went to the refugees, like, hey, I'm going to be with you, like, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from England or America or whatever. Like, oh, well,
they would
laugh. They're kind of mean to me. Like, oh, yeah, they're cutting off all our heads today. So, we win.
Yeah.
That's like something like, if I broke my arm right now, and you're like, I know what happened. I got a Charlie horse earlier. I'd be like, you know what? F you. Like,
right. I mean, basically. But, spoiled is, spoiled does. So,
oh, my God.
Elsewhere in the NBA tonight, you got Hawks and Sixers at 6:30 on TNT. Hawks are up 1-0 in the semis over Philly. And the Clippers, after their defeat of the Mavericks, Game 1, they're on the road against Royce O'Neal and the Utah Jazz. So big ups to Royce and a lot of Baylor connections there on Utah, obviously. That'll be the nightcap. And then tonight, NHL, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Game 5. Lightning are up 3-1 in that one. That's actually going to start here.
Carolina's the number 1 seed, I think.
That's starting in less than 30 minutes, actually. And then Vegas and Colorado, Game 5. That's tied at 2-2. That will be tonight at 8.
Let's go Bolts.
There you go.
Yeah, at Tampa Bay, that's my brothers were bringing that up. Michael, my second oldest brother, was bringing that up. He was excited about that. All right, anything else?
Well, that's all the stuff that's off the radar.
Hey, one quick programming note. We will carry Bosqueville baseball, the semifinal game tomorrow night